Welcome back. Our next guest is an award winning journalist and author who worked as a reporter at the Chicago Tribune for years.
And in her latest memoir entitled Three Girls from Bronzeville, she explores three women who all started life in one of Black America's most notable communities and dives into how they could have such diverging destinies. Please welcome to the show author Dawn Turner. Welcome, Dawn.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I feel like I have walked the streets of Bronzeville. The book is
Yeah,
set in this place in Chicago that you actually grew up in.
yeah.
And in the book, we see it sort of change and morph over time. But for the viewers, could you sort of describe the Bronzeville of your youth?
Absolutely. The Bronzeville of first my grandmother's childhood in 1916, when her parents brought her north to Chicago, freeing the Jim Crow South, was not my Bronzeville. The similarity was that Bronzeville was always a place filled with strivers and history makers and innovators who, as my grandmother would say back in the day, they took a bunch of scraps and stitched together a world. But the difference is that half a century later, when Deborah, Kim, and I were growing up there in the afterglow of the civil rights movement, our parents believed that the country was finally amenable to giving us the opportunities that it had denied generations of Blacks. Deborah's family and mine had just moved into this brand new apartment complex with its manicured lawns and colorful playgrounds. And this was to be the launching pad for us to begin partaking of the American dream.
Hmm. You mentioned some names there, so let's continue, notifying and informing the viewers. You have a friend in the book, and her name is Deborah. She lives in the unit above you, and you and Deborah and your younger sister Kim, you spend a lot of time together. So share with us a little bit of some of that stuff that the three of you got up to as kids.
Well, the three of us fell in love with the popular children's book character Pippi Longstocking. I'm not certain if she had reached there in Canada, but I think she did. She was
Yes.
a little girl with, yes, with red pigtails that stuck out, and she searched her small town for broken items for her Thing Finders Club. And in the spirit of Pippi, we searched Bronzeville for things we believed could be made whole and new again. And then years later, we would return to that exercise while remaking ourselves.
And you talk about losing them along the way. I mean, you grew up so tight, but then your lives went in very different directions. And I wonder if we could start with Kim and if you could just talk a little bit about when do you think you lost her?
Yeah, my sister had a baby when she was 17 years old, and our relatives had warned us against teen pregnancy. But Kim, being Kim, got pregnant. And she hoped the baby would settle her. But when the baby was born too soon, it died, or he died, I should say. And that devastated her, and she began to drink heavily. She wound up dying from alcoholism at just 24 years old.
Mm. Do you think you lost her at the moment that she died, or do you think you lost her years ago when she chose to rebel in that way?
I think when she chose to rebel,
Mm.
because I mean, our parents did everything. I mean, Deborah's family as well. They were engaged and involved in our lives. It's just that they pressed, Kim and Deborah pressed against those boundaries. And so that was the beginning. And could she have been saved? We'll never know.
Yeah. And you mentioned Deborah. Can you talk a little bit about when you lost Deborah?
Yeah, Deborah, like Kim, succumbed to addiction, and in 1998, she wound up shooting a man with whom she was doing crack cocaine. She was convicted of murder and sentenced to 50 years in prison, and she would spend 21 years of her life behind bars. She was released in 2019, and I drove to the prison along with her aunt and her sister to pick her up.
I think this is why I lost myself. I felt like I was reading about my own family. I have a cousin who, in addiction, killed three people in a car accident and is in an American prison, and got sentenced to, I think it was 14 years for each person. And it's just it's the story of all of our families, right? BIPOC
Yeah.
families. Addiction finds us so early and has such huge impacts on our stories.
And in line with Deborah's story, you were a real pillar of support for her throughout her incarceration, and you visited her, and as you mentioned, you picked her up from prison. Why was that so important for you to remain connected and to write to her and to visit her throughout her time in jail?
Sure. When Deborah and I became friends, I was a kid reeling from my parents' divorce and the reason for it. And she rescued me and my childhood. And the short answer to that question is that she was my friend. The Deborah I knew as a child, that beautiful, kind, big hearted girl with a laugh twice her size, never left. She just got lost and had to do the hard work of finding her way back to herself. But she was my friend.
You are the kind of friend we all need, I must say.
Hmm.
In your writing, you write a lot about forgiveness. Forgiveness is a tricky one, boy, whether you're thinking about forgiving yourself or forgiving others. It is one of those big hills to climb in life. And I'm wondering if you could tell us, through your writing and these incredibly rich experiences you've had, what have you learned about forgiveness?
There's a point in the book when Deborah's victim's widow and daughter drive to the prison to forgive Deborah. And I was there for that. And it was one of the most moving experiences of my life. They saw that Deborah had transformed herself and that redemption was possible behind bars. And so I think what I take away is that we all make mistakes. And there are many people who deserve a second chance. And too often it's a gift that they just don't get. My sister didn't get it, but Deborah did, and today she's thriving.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Wow. What a beautiful, beautiful story, a remarkable story. And thank you so much for sharing it with us today here on the show. Dawn, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
And the book is entitled Three Girls from Bronzeville. It is available everywhere now. Go out and get yourself a copy. We'll be right back.